We are a real estate and mortgage podcast, or a mortgage and real estate podcast. However you want to look at it, we're the loan guys. And if you haven't done it yet, bang that red subscribe button, turn on your notifications. And on January 31st, we're giving away a $100 Amazon gift card. If you bang that red subscribe button, turn on your notifications, and comment your thoughts on this video. And at the end, leave your Instagram handle. If you do all that, you have a shot to win $100. Boom. Ben, how many tech companies have left California?
352 companies have moved their headquarters out of the state of California between 2018 and 21, including names such as Oracle, Tesla, Charles Schwab, etc.
Pretty big companies with high-paying jobs are leaving California. So one more time, what do you think that does to home values?
Oh, deteriorate. I mean, people go where the jobs are.
People go where their jobs are, and the wealthy do what? They fix up their homes.
Yes.
And when I say wealthy, middle class up, fix up their homes. They do a good job with them. They take care of them. And I'm not saying all the lower class or people who don't have money don't do that, because a lot of them do. But a lot of them don't. And a lot of times you get into these areas where the policy is really bad. And what do those 5 cities have in common? Terrible policies. What else do they have in common?
I mean, rent control.
Rent control. Terrible policy.
Yeah.
I want to hear your thoughts on the rent control. I want to hear what it is, what you saw, and what you're looking at, and what your thoughts are on it.
I mean, it's ask any economist out there. It is not a good idea. It hurts absolutely everyone. I mean, it hurts the homeowner, because the investor who has the rental property, because it limits what they can do. It's the rent control isn't based off of their expenses. It's based off of outside factors that don't support that. And what happens to landlord, like to investors in the area, they're not going to want to invest in long-term rental properties, right? They're going to want to invest in other things. What it's going to do is going to limit the amount of available properties out there for rent. So anything that's outside of a rent control is going to absolutely skyrocket. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, not only is the landlord hurting, but the renter is going to hurt too. It actually is going to hurt the tenants. I just,
unless
there's no upside.
Unless, hear me out here.
Yeah.
Unless you're subsidized housing.
Yes.
Then it won't hurt you.
But that's different. That's not what they're talking about.
They are in some articles.
Okay.
Well, okay. So that's not what they're talking about. They're talking about capping the rent prices on everything, which is going to do what? Cause people to sell because it's no longer profitable.
Correct. They're going to convert to commercial,
correct,
whatever.
Okay.
They're going to find ways around it.
Okay, great. Maybe. Or they're going to move to cities that don't have that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So one of the two is going to happen. They're either going to turn that into commercial, which I don't think they'll do. And let me get into this.
Yep.
So they're either going to turn it to commercial and rent it to businesses, or they're going to sell it because they can no longer make a profit. They're going to take the cash or the profit that they've already made, and they're going to go find more cities that have friendlier policies to their businesses, which is in this case landlord, right? And friendlier policies to big business, right?
Well, that is what has historically happened.
Right. So that's historically happened forever. So hear me out here. So if these landlords are selling and moving, right?
Right.
And someone's buying these up, or they can't make a profit, which means they can no longer pay the mortgage or whatever the bills are on it, they're going to lose those properties. Something's going to happen when those properties are no longer in their possession. At the same time, if a certain small number keep them and capitalize in the short term by the booming rent prices, then what's going to happen? It's going to become more expensive for a business to operate their business in that area because they have to pay a wage that is closer to cost of living, and cost of living is going to go up for the people working at those businesses with higher incomes, right?
Right.
So those businesses are then going to move to an area that maybe the cost of living isn't as much. They can make the same profit, but pay somebody a reasonable wage that they can survive on. So now the businesses leave there, right?
Right.
So now that person who capitalized in the short term off the higher rent prices now no longer has anybody who can afford that house, so they're either selling the home, maybe taking a loss, but who is buying, right?
And I agree with you, but what happens when it's on a national scale?
Stop. Let me get to this.
Okay.
Let me get this thought out, right? And you want to keep jumping ahead. Let's explain it to people who don't understand. You want to jump to the conclusion. There's steps in between, right? So step one is you pass this policy. Nothing's going to happen right away. People are going to start realizing over the next, say, 12 months or so, what's step two? People are either going to sell or they're going to hang on because they can recognize a short-term profit, right?
Yes.
So they sell, some of them, and they take those profits and they move to someplace with a more reasonable policy.
Right.
It doesn't have to be the United States. There's other places with property rights.
Yes.
The United States isn't even top 10 in property rights at this point. Did you know that? Google top countries with top
Thought
property
they still
rights.
are up there. Them in Canada.
Mm.
Canada's up there.
Google it right now.
Okay.
Countries with top. See, you like to guess. I like to look at facts. So, number two is they move to places with more, or they put their money into something else. Maybe they put it into IRA, but their money is no longer in those properties. So those properties are sold, and those properties are going to probably not make a profit. But what is going to be profitable is the subsidized housing and of subsidized housing. We'll just call it that. Number three is the people who hung on for the short term are going to jack their rent prices up because they're going to have a nicer property, so on and so forth, right?
Right.
Number four, the businesses that are in that area can no longer operate at the same profit margins as they want to operate at because now they have to pay their employees who can to be able to afford decent living arrangements, decent quarters, correct?
Correct.
Most businesses pay salary based off the area and the cost of living in an area. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. So those businesses won't want to pay that anymore. So then they'll move to an area where it's more what? Cost effective. And we watch this happen with our factories, especially here in the American South. How many factory towns are pretty much shut down?
I mean,
A lot.
look at where we went to college.
Right. 100%.
Clinton, South Carolina.
So those properties are all going to do what? Those companies are all going to leave. And then that person who hung on to their property, who was getting a high rent because there was less availability, as you stated,
Yep.
will then either not be able to afford that property anymore and it will be taken from them, whether it's through tax liens or mortgage foreclosures. They could try to turn it into a commercial property, but who wants to do business there, right? Maybe J.C. Penney?
Right.
Probably not. Or those properties are going to be out of their hands, though, right?
Right.
So then it's going to go into affordable subsidized housing. So who controls that? HUD, correct?
Correct.
So now the government has just taken your property from you through a series of steps. That could happen, or big corporations could buy those properties up and get incentives from the government to control those properties. Either way, it's either corporatism or it's socialism. But one of the two are happening. And it's socialism on a big scale. Some social programs are good, I understand. But do you get what I'm saying?
I do.
So that is not good for anybody, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah. And I mean, I said this earlier, like, look at history. Like, I mean, every time any sort of rent controlled initiative has gone out there and it's that area, it's negatively affected it.
the reason I talk about the area,
Yeah.
is because you cannot do this on a national scale.
I agree.
The Supreme Court will not allow it. It won't happen. It's just not going to happen. It's going to get tied up. He's going to get sued.
Like, shouldn't happen. Yeah.
It's going to. They're going to sign an executive order. Oh, we're for the working class. That ain't for the working class.
No,
folks.
it's hurt. San Francisco passed the rent control initiative in 1994.
Right.
What ended up happening? 15% decline in available homes for rent.
Right.
We're already in an issue with vacancy. We're already in a historically lows for vacancy factors. There's a shortage out there, which we have talked about numerous times. A 15% decline in that, what is that going to do? Like that is going to absolutely destroy the rental market.
It's going to drive prices up and up and up and up.
Right.
And it's going to talk about the wealth gap then, right? Everyone wants to always talk about the wealth gap.
Yes.
You're going to destroy the wealth gap, which is going to destroy sections of cities' real estate values.
Right. And not only that, what are landlords going to do in terms of money they're putting back into it?
Less money back into it because they have to make a profit.
Look at Los Angeles right now. You see all these rundown apartment buildings. Why is that? It's because they can't charge what they need to keep it in actual great order like the tenants deserve.
I grew up in an area like that, a bunch of 2-family homes, right? And it was a bunch of landlords who owned them.
Right.
And a lot of it was Section 8. They got designated Section 8, right? So the government was sending them, say, $1,000 per unit.
Right.
And they're like, oh, this is great. And then they would move to Florida to retire or whatever. And they just wouldn't take care of it. And you've been to where I grew up and you drive down, there's one street, I'm not going to say the street, but there's one street in the city that you drive down as you first enter the city and it looks like a war zone.
Yeah.
Does it not?
It does.
So, I mean, it's absolutely insane. And you look at these areas and then you're like, what the hell's going on? Right. And it's just so funny to me, man, that people just think that, hey, we're going to have the government control the housing market. We're going to have the government control rent prices. We're going to have the government control this. We're going to have the government control that. The biggest problem is you need to create competition.
Yes.
Competition drives price down. That's less restriction.
Right.
The more the government gets involved, the worse off you get, right? The more rules there are, typically the worse off it is.
You want to understand anything in life, look at supply and demand. Like really, like you're saying competition. Why is that good? Because there's more of a demand out there, or more supply. I mean, out there.
Right.
Like,
well, and then also
there's more options, but it makes them have the incentive to put extra work in.
Makes a better product.
Exactly.
You have to have a better product. So when there's more supply because of competition, but the barriers,
it's better for the consumer.
But the barriers to entry have to be lowered, right?
Yeah.
So you put rent caps in, you're increasing the barriers to entry.
Yes.
Because in order to be profitable renting a home, you would need to have a more expensive home.
Right.
Which fewer people can afford.
With more maintenance costs.
Correct. But at the end of the day, you're having to buy a higher price house, right?
Yeah.
Just to get in. And then at the end of the day, that if you're a first time home buyer, there's certain neighborhoods you're not going to want to buy in because they've now become run down. Because whatever the reason is. And it's a troubling thing that they want to put rent controls in. And it speaks to everything we spoke about leading up to their new policies that they're talking about doing.
Right.
And now the Biden administration might sign this in as an executive order.
Right.
As soon as next week.